Yes, if I should nod off in between, it's because I haven't slept in 8 days. I checked, world record is 11, but I hope it doesn't come to that. The reason I'm here, first of all, I want to thank the crew from Connect 365 and ePharma for being interested, considering me to jump into this slot that opened up. Very, very honored to show you some really cool things that I came across for my last 46 years on this planet. But it should be a little interesting when it comes to the middle of the speech to wake you up with a tiny little extract that I was so cleverly hidden in front of you. But I don't want to sell anything. I want to put some ideas into people's heads, innovation, etc., etc. And what I'm selling today is pretty much just good old ancient wisdom about chemistry. As Bitesh said, I am a PhD in nutritional biochemistry and molecular biology. I did that when I was fairly young at age. So I did my first doctorate when I was 19. In Germany, and didn't do anything with this for a very long time, and I kind of regret not having done that. But I jumped into a specific niche where I could teach and educate people, specifically children, in order to stay healthy, prevent diseases when it comes to beverage and food specifically. I don't know if any born New Yorkers here that remember a restaurant chain called Sushi Samba. I was opening that baby, all the Buddha bars across the world, Gas Panic in Tokyo, Hemisphere in Sydney. And I applied what I'm talking about today specifically when it comes to the olfactory bulb, scent, memory evoking, as well as healing, anything from autism, scent therapies, to VR, to Alzheimer's, and evoking memories by healing, and mostly also with frequency and vibration. So I specifically specialized my life in healing and helping others without specifically promoting anything or selling products. But what I'm here to do is kind of kick you guys in the butt, put you back on the school bench, quiz you a little bit. First question, how many roses does it take to make an ounce of rose perfume? Speak up, speak up. 2 dozen. That's a lot. Anybody else? Guess? There's prizes. Okay? So everybody who guesses right gets a nice little prize here today.
300.
300. Okay, one more guess. 12,000 hand-picked roses to create 1 ounce of rose essence. Yes. That's something that was fascinating to me always. As I went into becoming a perfumer, I created some things for Tom Ford that were unisex, so for women and men. Reason for that is the way our brain works, and I'll come back to that and circle back to that later. Since I was born, even before we were born on an evolutionary base, we all are born with a little USB stick in our head. That goes back 200,000 years, and specifically 20,000 years ago when we learned how to run away from fire because of the scent of smoke. Smoke, perfume, meaning obviously scent in Latin, was something that fascinated me all my life, because you cannot really compare people with each other and say, like, this is one group of people, they work this way, this is another group of people. Every single person that sits here today has a different soul, and the soul is whatever you and I ate, smelled, and ingested and put on our skin for all of our lives. And it starts with your parents as well. So what your parents do to you, and sort of, experimented a little bit on my newborn in a very obviously legal way to say, like, hey, how do nootropics work, while you're pregnant, and how does this work while you're pregnant? And there was no research on any of these topics, obviously. Specifically with apps too. I walk around here, everything is about VR and digital age, but what happens if the lights go out? Just a little, food for thought. It's something that we should come back to as being human, and that's what my dad already told me. He's like, how do I teach my kids how to cook a meal? Cultural context gets lost. Obviously, home ed is no longer existent here in American education, so people don't know how to cook meals anymore. So I'm the one that now goes in front of tiny little kids and says, this is the way you eat. This is how you shouldn't eat. This is how you prevent diseases. But I'm working very closely with the pharma industry to innovate and invent products that not only cure and heal, but also prevent certain things. And the first prevention I was talking about today is obviously the prevention of Visalgia, which is the medical term for hangover. Everybody's ever had a hangover before? Raise their hands. Don't lie, raise their hands. Okay. So, yes, what is a hangover? Anybody can tell me the definition of a hangover?
Headache. Bleary eyes.
Bleary eyes. Well done. Vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, calling in sick for work, killing your girlfriend. So, like, yes, that's a hangover. A hangover has nothing to do with dehydration, has nothing to do with sugars. It's simply a deficiency of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals in the human body. So when you drink booze, no matter if it's wine, beer, or spirits, your body metabolizes it to two different things, mostly ethanol, the fun stuff, right? You get phone numbers, you start dancing, you get, laid. And then after that, something else gets produced and metabolized by your body, which is 30 times more toxic than alcohol itself, which is acetaldehyde. Anybody's ever heard of acetaldehyde? #1 cancer-causing ingredient in cigarettes. Okay, so that acetaldehyde roams through your system and depletes your body of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals before you go to sleep. But if you don't want that to happen, I developed a product about 15, 16 years ago that was very, very popular here in New York specifically because this is the city of responsible revelry. Where you can only educate when you have certain personalities that you can talk to, because the average teenager, there's not a lot of scientists on covers of magazines anymore. It's more like there's a singer, there's a 10-time Grammy Award-winning, supermodel and whatnot. So you need to attack these people first to say, like, hey, I have this lab in Long Island City that overlooks the city. And why don't you come there and tell me what's wrong with you? So you got all these personalities that showed up and said, okay, everybody had the same thing. It was either the hangover, depression, paranoia, or anxiety, which will be by 2020 the most diagnosed illness in the world. And we're responsible for it, which is kind of weird to talk about. So it starts, really, my story starts with my father, my grandmother. Her name was Frida, and she was a great baker. And I grew up in Africa. My parents were so screwed up that they thought they could take a 5-year-old out of kindergarten and then move to a different country. So, I was the only Caucasian kid in Kenya at that time. And changed my entire microbiome around and said, okay, apricot jam now is home. As before it was raspberry jam. So everything sort of gets stored, like you can see. And your entire life, you're pretty much acting on this. The way you think, whatever memories you evoke and you want to evoke can be simply done with your nose, because there's a few million scent receptors up there that tell you exactly where to go, how to behave. And what I give you today, let's say you live to be 2 million years old, and I give it to you again in 2 million years, you will exactly remember every single moment, every single color, what was talked about in a microsecond. And not photographs can do that or touch, but only scent and flavor. So that's why I sort of went into that kind of niche, which I don't really want to call a niche, because sometimes niches are very negative things to say. My grandmother raised me as a baker, cooking 3 times a day, sending me into the garden, getting fresh leeks and chives, and teaching me everything about vegetables, herbs, and how to feed yourself. I met other friends who were used to different things. If I wanted to evoke memories from American people, let's say, and I give them a PB&J martini, right? They think back in high school, because by the time an American child finishes high school, they have about 4,600 PB&J sandwiches. That's a fact, So that's America. For me, it was totally different. If you go to Japan, it's red bean, green tea, right? They wouldn't know what the hell PB&J is. So if you wanted to do an event, such as this, maybe, and incorporate certain ingredients into this event, it's better to know your target group, correct? Demographic is everything. So I started thin threading all the flavors and scents of the world while traveling around with my parents. My dad was an architect and a jazz musician. He played with Dizzy Gillespie when I was 5 years old. Obviously, I back then didn't know who Dizzy and Miles were. And my mom, she was a nutritionist, and that's how I sort of jumped into this whole thing and became an inventor of nutraceutical products. Worked with pharma, worked with a lot of e-marketing people in order to create apps, to educate mostly public figures that showed up and said, okay, I have a skin disease, I have digestion, I have sleep problems. And that's how kind of started, because the body is just not flesh and blood alone. There's atoms that are vibrating. And how many atoms? It's a 7 with 27 zeros behind it that can resonate, that can absorb energy and produce energy. So it not only makes good sense if we say something nice to someone next to us, but we feel better, or if I say screw you, it makes us aggressive. Your entire body reacts on this. And scent and flavor is one of those fascinating things. I learned very well when I traveled around, and I met a lot of herbalists, Nobel laureates, things who invented some phenomenal things like the limitless pill at MIT, magnesium supplement, crosses blood-brain barrier. They made movies about products like this with Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper. Everybody's seen that movie, yeah. So we have that pill, right? And it's just a tiny little powder, and you take it. It's not as intense as the movie shows you, but I eat it every day, and it really does help. It's better for language skills, short-term, long-term memory, reflexes. Something falls off the table, you do this, and you're like, how in the world did I just do this? And it really does work. And if you infuse that into beverage and food, you can create functional foods and beverages, and that's what I've been doing most of the last 15 years. So when I moved to New York, and to circle back to my upbringing, I met herbalists like Ron Teagarden that showed me how to fingerprint identical transfer technology. It's literally just, why don't we take the whole plant, put them into the body rather than an extract? And for those things, we sort of recreated the entire world of beverage by showing people that you only really need 5 or 6 drinks on a cocktail menu of any restaurant around the world, if it's custom made, to satisfy every one of us. And this is what I came to do. So I hooked up with the Flavor House. I went to Borneo and to all the other rainforests in the world, and so scared to be up there, because it's about like 200, 300 feet high above the tree canopies, to hang on a hot air balloon to extract flower extracts and scents that nobody's ever heard of, to bring them back to Cincinnati, Ohio, put them into a gas chromatograph and apply them to food, beverage, and fragrance industries. Because that's the people that have 4 different machines that only they can have, because they're about $500 million per machine. They're called supercritical extractors. And these extractors, like I said before, you can put 12,000 roses in one of those things, and on the other end, you get a tiny bottle with essential oil. So these 4 companies are pretty much responsible for every food flavoring that you and I, from cosmetics to Coca-Cola to Tom Ford, you and I ever had on our body or in our body. So if you create a product, you have to go to these companies. And that's who I worked with, a handful of scientists who basically had a lab floating above tree canopies. And I was in there getting bitten by Danum Valley spiders and mosquitoes, because it's not pleasant travel, let me tell you. I have bitten by 4 different types of spiders before. I always have spider kits with me, which is very, very helpful. You should do that too if you go on vacation. And vaccines, malaria multiple times, neural, everything was failing in my body. But it's fascinating to see these people, working with them to use, scent trapping, to trap something in a glass, a cylinder, and bring it back thousands of miles to recreate it in the lab and apply it to us. So the entire time, see how the brain works, applying things. I created a few drink menus around the world, starting with the famous Buddha bar, where I met very, very amazing people. First one was opened in Paris, and by the late Raymond Vizon. And he was revolutionizing restaurant industry, not only because he had these great Buddha bar CDs, music CDs, but he would really let me do the flavor thing. And up to this point, like 23, 24 years ago, when it came from Paris to the United States. The drinks are still on the menu because I sort of brought flavor to New York City. I don't know if you know what a muddle stick is. If people Google my name, and that's why it's so important that you meet me in person, nobody knows what I do for a living. People think I do cocktails. If you Google my name on Wikipedia anywhere, all that pops up is cocktails. People mistake it with mixology, and mistake it with alchemism, because I'm also an alchemist, and that is something that is a little crazy, because what I do for space travelers, and that's where a man named Mark Kelly came in. He's running for Senate in Arizona right now. Everybody knows that astronaut, Man of the Year, GQ, yeah. He became my friend, him and his twin brother, Scott Kelly. They spent over a year on the space station. They're not identical anymore because their DNA changed by about 6.8% because of gamma radiation. So they're not identical anymore. But I met them at Buddha Bar, and he said to me, Alex, did you make these drinks? And I said, yes. He said, well, these flavor profiles are pretty out of control because they remind me of some things. So we started conversation. He gave me his lapel mission pin. It was the STS 125, I think, or 132. And I was hooked because the waitress told me there's 3 astronauts sitting on that table. One of them was Lisa Novak, and then the other 2 was Mark and Scott Kelly. So out of this came this tiny little kit here that I always carry with me that has hyper-infused coffee beans to get people off of coffee because it's very bad for your stomach, you know. And put them on matcha green tea because it's an adaptogenic caffeine. And literally, we are not addicted to coffee itself or the caffeine inside. We're more addicted to the scent molecule. And that scent molecule is called guaiacol. That's the smell of a coffee bean that we perfumers also use to heighten our sense of smell. So at early age, again, traveling around from Africa, I grew up in Kenya, 12 years, 5 years in Australia, 6 years in Thailand. And at the same time that I met these astronauts, I boarded a plane in Bangkok, Thailand, and on landing we crashed. So the plane went down on landing at night and killed over 100 people, and I was one of a few lucky ones that survived. After that, I was in a wheelchair for a year and didn't want to get back on an airplane, obviously. Was a little nervous even to look at an airplane. And what I studied before, I sort of infused into specific ingredients, and with 4 different anxiolytic teas, created something that could substitute benzos at some point, you know, and approached specific pharma companies and said, okay, I have something for you that you should really be looking at, because I tried it out on 400 soldiers in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, that come back and sleep with their guns under their pillow. And I just simply gave them a hydrophilic tea, which is literally levigating tea leaves into a fine powder. So water extraction is about 85% more effective than actually brewing it. So you get the entire plant, it dissolves in cold water as well. And I would try out all these things. Come back, move to New York, open up a bar before in Tokyo called Gas Panic, and tried some flavors out in the nightlife industry in Tokyo, and Roppongi, which is an expat district in Tokyo. Then after that, Sushi Samba, New York City. I invented the muddle stick, extracting essential oils out of drinks. And that's when they called me mixologist, which is far away from what we do because Grandmaster Flash invented that term, okay? And he was a DJ, and he actually DJ'd here at Live 15, 16 years ago in New York City on a Friday night. There's a bartender that sells drinks, and then there's a chemist who should be making up a drink menu. And some of these drink menus I want to present to you here on the side. That's basically just walk in there, and that's how it works. So we came up with a lot of different really cool gadgets there. To circle back to the astronaut thing, at the same time, I met Mark Kelly, and he said, can you do this without alcohol in a very tiny form? So let me see what we have here on slides. There he is. So he said, Alex, it would be really cool if you could interview each individual astronaut and interview them about how they grew up, what they had when they were little, what scents, what jams, their mom's favorite fragrance, whatever makes them feel more like home. So I studied the nutritional status assessment documents of the lunar, Mars, life support test project, okay, which is when 2 astronauts go into a capsule for 6 months and they'll see what happens to the bones and blood production and obviously their olfactory organs. So I invented something. When astronauts squeeze out a bubble of water, looks about this big, it's in a drink pouch. And then I asked Mark where he grew up. And all these flavors combined, I put into a tiny little matrix, tiny little ball that was encapsulated with his entire life, pretty much. So he puts this into the water bubble and sucks it out, and it makes him feel more like home on deep space travel. And that's what I do now. So by thin threading gene radar of Sangeeta Goel, who also is a PhD MD at NASA, who invented a lot of really cool things, including cures for Zika and whatnot, I came up with an experience, and it has my name on it, and Citibank, MasterCard, all these guys were sort of the first ones to feature it, to have themed seminars, just like this one too, for 200, 400 people at some time, to educate people about our ancient plants and wisdom and where it came from, and then incorporate everything into an experience by asking people questions a week before they attended the event. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And we make edible soap bubbles, and they come into the room a week later. They pop the bubbles of other people, and nothing happens to them, and then they pop their own bubble, and people start crying. And that's how powerful it is sometimes, And then we go through 5 different little things, different elixirs together. But one of these elixirs I wanted to show you today, which I use for Mark, is astronauts can have carbonated beverages in space because it screws up with the digestive tract, right? Really, really bad pressure if you're upside down. Not so good for your digestion. So how do you get the carbonation effect without the actual gas in your stomach? Anybody know? I want you to reach under your seat. In the very front, on the first metal, is a centrifuge vial with a little flower inside. That's correct, guys. I'm going to give you a flower today. Don't be afraid. People are usually injecting heroin and sort of things into their veins, but they're afraid to eat a flower. I don't think so. So what I would like you to do is open the vial all at the same time. Everybody's got one? Yeah. Yes? Yes? Okay, open it up. Look at the flower, how beautiful it is. This is a daisy flower, and it grows in Brazil and in China. It's called acmella. It's also called the electric daisy. You'll find out in a minute why. It's the toothache plant as well. It has some amazing bioactive properties, including you got them? Okay. Including anything against HIV, cancer, skin conditions. It's an immunomodulatory, it's an antimicrobial, pesticidal, it's an anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. You can use it on your skin as a transdermal to relieve wrinkles in minutes because it literally organizes collagen. And in minutes, as a woman only. And I want you to eat it now. Chew on it for 30 seconds. Really chew on it until it's disintegrated. The whole thing with the stem. And lick your lips a couple of times. Don't be scared. I give this to little kids at World Science Festival. Okay, you can do this too. And what it does now, it paralyzes your trigeminal, which is responsible for flavor, motor function, so forth. Stimulates your salivary glands by activating ion channels and giving you that 9-volt battery effect on your tongue, which is literally what we're looking for. So this is what you're looking for. That's why it's called the electric daisy, but it mimics carbonation and effervescence in space for astronauts so they don't have the gas in their stomach. So this is pop rocks without the CO2, right? But it goes a little deeper because women could induce a climax in 25 seconds on contact. That's why I'm telling you, eat it first. In order to create a liquid drop of the chemicals called spillenthal, it takes about 900 flowers to make one liquid drop. I used to give this out on a dropper bottle, and I have a little picture of me doing this, kind of like TED Talk style. And then there's about 6,000 women doing this, and half of them run to the bathroom and, half of them try it out up there. But you guys like it? It cleanses. If you have strep throat, if you have sore throat, it's gone in seconds. Amazing thing to do. And Okay, let's see what's next here. Okay, we had this one. Keith. No, Craig. Can you hear me? Here we go. All right. So to come back, you can apply this anywhere. Talking the last few minutes about cocktails is always something that I wanted to do. But as you've seen, there are some really amazing applications that you can do if you work closely with more biochemists, botanists, and promote this whole thing on your iPhone, on your pad, everything, whatever you have. You can create some really amazing apps of ingredients you have at home, recipes, formulations, even nobody's allergic to this ever. But I wanted to show you some examples that we do at these events that we do. So like this one here is sort of the stimulant. I always call it cocaine in a glass. Obviously, I can't say that, but oops, I did. It's something that people look for, in 8 seconds from going from 0 to, yay, I want to party. This is pretty much that. Normally, they all work without the alcohol, which is a wonderful thing because there's 30% of the people who don't even drink. Coming back to Visalgia, the hangover. You cannot cure the hangover. Did you know that? There's no cure for the hangover, but there's a prevention for the hangover. And if you feed your body tons of B1 and N-acetylcysteine before you go to sleep, or eat a couple bananas, drink lots of pineapple juice, it will boost your glutathione level, which is the body's biggest antioxidant, to get the acetaldehyde out of your system before it can lead to these bad side effects that you're having when you drink alcohol. When you come to an event, don't you sometimes think, okay, my wife stressed me out so much, I have so much anxiety, I need to have something that calms me down, right? The other guy is too sleepy, needs to wake up. This is the sort of thinking that should be applied to everyday life, whatever we eat, and at what time we eat it during the day, too. So if you look at these posters, this is the upper, right? Makes total sense. And we have something called usually the benzo in the glass on the left, which I invented after my ordeal in Thailand. And I have to fly tomorrow morning. I'm flying to Los Angeles, and I'm already nervous about the flight, right? So I always carry a little dropper bottle with me. But the ingredients in here, every housewife has them in her pantry, but they have no idea how to put them really together, unless they meet a plant botanist. But the one on the left, I used to call intellectual humility. It's something, sort of the benzo without the side effects of amnesia. I used to fly around, meet people on the plane, and say like, wow, we had some great conversations, and pull their business cards out of their pocket, and I said the next day, I've never met you before, and that's what those things did to us. The one on the right is a PMS cure, like really, really crazy. Did anybody know why gin was invented? No. Mainly. Gin was invented to sort of cut the bitterness of quinine powder that was used in India for the British soldiers because it was extremely bitter. It was used against malaria. And there was a doctor in Leiden, Holland, who invented a bottle of gin. It was a neutral grain spirit that was flavored with botanicals. Not only flavored, but it actually had botanicals in here if you want to take a closer look after this talk. The bottle says female complaints. Okay, so if you as a woman, any problems, 2 shots of real gin, will do the job. Very, very well. This is also an edible cosmeceutical because it has levigated pearl powders in it. So very fresh pearls. Then we have the mind opener, which is sort of like the limitless pill as a drink. It's matcha green tea based. It's an adaptogenic caffeine. You can fall asleep. You can wake up however your body wants to. And as I said, if you want to add a couple more nootropics in there, you can do that as well. And the last one, and the most important that you have all experienced just now, is called the neural handshake, which is what I use as a conversation starter. So when people ask me what I do for a living, I just give them a flower to eat. But I want to thank you for listening to all this nonsense. Right? If you have any more questions, you can follow me on Instagram, AlexOttScience, all one word, and ask me a ton of more questions. I will get back to you because I know all of my followers. I only have 2,000. But as I said, it was an honor, pleasure being here, talking about what I do for a living. You can touch some things, see some amazing powders, extracts, and whatnot. If you're interested, ask me some questions about health, what you can do in order to cure certain things. And if you want to create an app, if you want to go into the e-business with this whole thing, it makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of things that are very, very undiscovered in rainforests that we are systematically destroying right now that can really, really do us good. We tripled our lifespan, tripled in 100 years, and now we're going backwards by eating packaged foods. So we need to sort of change that again, see what our body's made of, how your microbiome looks like, because if you don't take time to be healthy now, you'll have to eventually find time to be sick later, and that's not the way you want to go. So as my dad said, why try to explain miracles to my kids if I can just have them plant a garden? And he was totally right about that. So thanks to him, thanks to you guys for listening. And time's up, I guess. Yeah.
Questions, anyone? Robert.
So what do you do?
Sorry, don't answer that.
I wrote my dissertation in hydrophobic liquids, meaning plant extracts, essential oils, which is the essence of a plant. I did my doctorate in specifically how flowers and when flowers open up their buds to release scent chemicals and communicate with other plants. And you learn a lot about plants, the way how smart they are, because we don't really see them as living organisms anymore. It's just like, oh, there's a tree. I was like, did you know that tree is carbon neutral and produces oxygen? And it literally, follows the sun and gives us what we need. But like I was always fascinated using plants, extracting them, and not just experimenting. It's just I had the knowledge already from my parents because I was raised like this. I was having a rifle on my back when I was 12, playing with lions. Like it was a pretty amazing childhood now thinking about it, but back then I had to learn Swahili. Who learned Swahili? And then moving around. But I am a biochemist. I work a lot with neurobiology, obviously, with scent as well. And now my title would be nutritional biochemist because I teach people on what their own body is really like. If they have skin conditions, I can give them certain probiotics. I can give them plant essences to literally, heal themselves from inside out, so they don't have to put anything on the skin. And we can do that in 28 days, and work with mortal herbs, Chinese herbs that have been worked with for 5,000 years without side effects. So we promote this to the pharma industry to say, like, work with us. We can revolutionize everything. So that's what I'm here. I used to be a storyboard artist, really. Like I wanted to win an Oscar for production design. I worked on a few movies, The Matrix, Fight Club, The Beach. That's why I ended up in Thailand. I dated the French chick, So, and then after she dumped me for DiCaprio, I was in a plane crash. So that was a crazy story. So, but it's more than that. It's just I've seen a lot of death. I've seen a lot of health, and to me, helping others is sort of like how I pay rent on this planet, and it's a beautiful planet still. But did this answer your question? Not at all.
See you later, Robert.
I formulate specific things from anything from beverage, food, elixirs, to fragrances, fine fragrances as well. Yeah.
So,
What do you think has been the biggest hurdle for you to get
The FDA.
the FDA. What is the
Well, obviously, it's
biggest
the FDA. I mean, like there's certain, products, not only the hurdle for me, but hurdles for companies that have been very traditional. You see cola companies, for instance. I'm not going to name any, but there was a guy who was a pharmacist who went to Africa to get the cola nut with a K, because it had adaptogenic caffeine in it. You can make chocolate from it. You can ferment it. And they put it into a bottle, kind of like an Adderall in a bottle. It's like it was meant for concentration and digestion, and then that specific agency said, like, you're no longer allowed to use these plants, that have been used for thousands of years without side effects. So I'm not talking about politics today. I'm just saying that it would be nice if someone would, make a sort of change without getting exiled, without getting, doing things, because we can still be in business. It's no big deal. It's just how we do that is something that I want, especially now I have a kid. It's 8 days old, and she is my life now. It's not all about me anymore. I'm leaving a planet behind where she will probably flip me off for saying, like, you've known for 40 years what you're doing with this thing, and why haven't you done anything? That's what I'm sort of worried about. And how do I answer that question? And so I'm very sure I will teach her some of the things that I've learned being in the jungle, creating things, being in the lab all day. I'm in the lab all day. I have it in my apartment. That's the only difference. I don't have to go somewhere. And it's people are, you're invited to come and visit me there. Bring 3 friends, come over.
We'll be there in about 10 minutes.
Okay. And I have more of these flowers for you, and they're widely available. You can get those on Amazon, So there's nothing to worry about. So, but
Okay, one more question. One more question,
go ahead.
Alex, and then we'll have. So, okay, in the corner, and I'll repeat your question, so I'll repeat it before you answer it.
So I have a question because CBD oil, right?
CBD oils? Yeah.
And it seems to cure everything from your dog to your cat to
Yeah,
your
wait.
I can hear you, don't worry.
Hear me right? CBD oil. What, because this seems to be.
Do you really want me to say something about that right now? It's the biggest trend right now, and guess what I'm doing tomorrow? I'm flying to LA to work the High Times Dope Cup in California. So I'm doing THC elixirs, right, for a living. How fun is that? Being with 12,000 stoners, but like, it's rap stars in the desert in Adelanto, but like, CBD it's a trend. The flower I gave you has an extract that's 200 times more potent than CBD. It's just, and it's cheaper because there's 200 parts of THC to 1 part of CBD in the plant. It's not very, viable to like do this, and it's more psychotropic effects in there. But CBD, it's great. It's transdermal. You can bathe in it. You can give it to your kids, but it's no observable benefit right away. You can eat a liter of it if you wanted to, but it is healthy. So I like CBD because most people didn't even know about the cannabinoid system in the human body was there before we discovered CBD and THC, because it controls mood and pain and a lot of other things. But now that we have CBD and THC and we have all these wonderful receptors, because there's 400 different strains of bud out there, which I will be sampling tomorrow legally, It's it's phenomenal, but there's plenty of more plants out there, like the one I gave you tonight. Why am I the only one that works with this plant? I'm asking you. Because it is, if you Wikipedia it, you go to medicinal uses, it'll blow your brains out.
Well, Alex, you've blown our brains out. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.